Hi, this is Roger Craver, editor of The Agitator. I'm here with Josh Witchard, who's a partner in Donor Voice and a 15-year veteran of direct response fundraising. Josh and the team at Donor Voice have been conducting a series of experiments, which I think you'll find fascinating. Well, they're more than experiments, they're approaches to cutting out on some of the needless volume. And I think you're in for a real treat this morning. Before we jump into this session, a few housekeeping notes for the day. Next Wednesday, we have the third and the final series of the behavioral science set, and that will be done by Kiki Katmendu, who's the behavioral scientist at Donor Voice, and the subject is on opt-in. Now, opt-in is going to be increasingly important in the UK and the EU, where the fundraising regulators will probably require that a donor opt in before they can be contacted by the nonprofit. But here in the States and in North America and elsewhere in the world, opt in is very important if you want to get the most out of your communications and treat that with the seriousness it deserves. So tune in next Wednesday at the same time, and we'll talk about opt-in. Today's session is being recorded. We're going to send everyone who's registered information on how to access that recording after the session. We'll also be taking questions. We have Nick Ellinger here with us from Donor Voice, who's going to handle that. On the right-hand side of your screen, you can enter your question, and we'll try to answer as many of these as possible at the end of the session. But if we don't get to all of them, we will aggregate the questions and circulate the answers in writing in a few days. If you don't get your question in, or you want your question to be private, just send us an email afterward and we'll get back to you. Let me also call your attention to the white paper that's been prepared on the science of ask strings. I picked that up and look it over. That was a valuable session, so I've heard from a number of people, and you may well want that white paper for your library and for your reading as you head for year-end giving. Finally, there's a special prize to those agitator subscribers who attend all three of these sessions. We'll do a free audit of either a landing page or an online communication, whatever your choice is, and apply behavioral science to that. If you're not a subscriber, you can go to the link at the bottom of this slide, agitator//subscribe, and subscribe. So let's get into the meat of the matter here. This morning in the Agitator, the lead sentence was, "You may think you don't have an over-solicitation problem, but your donors think otherwise." Well, I got a whole bunch of email early this morning disagreeing. "Oh, no, we don't have one." Well, out of all the emails I got, only one person had bothered to ask the donors whether they felt over-solicited or not. And one of the things we'll discuss today is just what this issue of over-solicitation is doing to make retention worse. And we're going to do this in the context of what we're calling the volume model from the donor's perspective. And a volume model is the frequency, the volume of appeals and communications that are sent to donors. And why in monitoring donor reactions through feedback, Donor Voice has discovered a new process or a new vehicle for giving that may well, for most organizations, fill the gap between single gifts and monthly giving. And you'll see what this is about. And then we'll apply the behavioral science techniques that can be used in this new vehicle, and why that works, and why you may want to consider that. So I'm going to turn this over to Josh to describe this volume model and why we're so concerned about it. Josh?
Great. Thank you, Roger. Thanks for having us on today. We certainly appreciate it, and thanks to everybody who is willing to join us on the webinar for this hour. The outline for, as Roger kind of talked about, the outline that we'll walk through today is fairly straightforward. First, we're going to try to frame the problem as we see it, partly from kind of the industry perspective and partly with some hard data that we have in the market. But also today, we're going to peel back the curtain on a bit of a massive and ever-growing data set that we've been compiling now for the better part of 18 months of donor voice in the form of specific donor feedback about their interactions with 31 different organizations that are using our feedback platform in the US, in the UK, and across Europe. And based on those insights and based on the framing of the problem, we're also going to share with you a potential solution for food for thought. This is our thinking of where we've gotten with a set of clients that are kind of going to market with an approach that's trying to best meet donors' needs and, equally as important, meet the organization's fundraising goals at the same time. So let's frame this problem a little bit. Like I said, we'll do this from the industry perspective and then a bit with some hard data and dig into the donor feedback. This global term here probably reads better as commercial, but Seth Godin, as always, can succinctly summarize the issue at hand for commercial marketers at least, and would argue that this really does frankly apply for nonprofits as well. You know, this is talked about ad nauseum at conferences, but it's the proliferation of media and technology and giving us access to more than we can consume as consumers, right? And maybe in the digital space, there's been certainly kind of more tools brought to bear in market where improvements in timing and targeting is affording us more ability to use touch points as a scalpel versus the hammer, but even still, as Seth Godin suggests here, the answer often remains that more is the solution. If you don't think Seth Godin's point of view applies here in our nonprofit context, this is a quote from Penelope Burke that's not even 6 months old, who's done a lot of research and publishing specific to the nonprofit sector. And as she states here, the number one reason why she sees people stop giving is as what we've kind of dubbed, and Roger just alluded to, this volume machine, that it's more solicitation, it's more ask, it's more content. The reality is, you know, that this is a massive kind of issue to attempt to tackle, and there's so many factors that play into this when we think about it at the individual donor level, right? Donating and soliciting has many impacts at the individual level, and it is individual. There's physical reactions. There's research that has been done showing that the act of giving is rewarded in our brains. It provides us a rush. It creates warm glow. And the reality is the act of receiving solicitations is doing the opposite. There's a great article that everybody should look up that talks about the man who couldn't stop giving, and they've actually dug into and looked at through MRI data showing the dopamine results from giving, and also showing the kind of the counter effect that's happening when we're receiving solicitations. The volume model that we have, especially in the single gift model, right, which is essentially we're asking a person to give, and what we're asking for is them to give today, that one gift. And then the reality is if I give, I'm very likely to receive another solicitation from said organization within a matter of weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, maybe it's 5 weeks, maybe it's even in the acknowledgement. And yes, at times those things are effective, but the reality is that we are undoing the warm glow. We're undoing all of the positive feelings that I have about myself, that I did good for the world, and this dopamine that's released as a result of my giving, right? That we're contradicting ourselves, that I gave, but all of these subsequent solicitations are having me question whether or not giving is in fact, but my act of giving was in fact successful or worth doing. So kind of looking back on the kind of what Penelope Burke said about solicitations and volume, the reality is, here's the numbers, okay? This is male volume, 14% decline in donors, but only a 7% decrease in volume. So our volume has actually gone up based on the available universe, how far that's gone down. On the email side, as that continues to expand, we're seeing fundraising emails get more and more, that we've sent more fundraising emails in 2015 than in 2014. The average group, according to this M&R study, was 49 messages overall in 2015. Okay? So maybe not all those ask for money, but I would caution anybody in looking at your communications calendar and believing that our donors are discerning solicitations from cultivation or stewardship or engagement, whatever you want to call that, right? That we're looking at a lot. If you have email address, we're looking at a high volume. And the reality is giving on, this is per Blackbaud's charitable index, giving on the donor basis averages in 2015 1.77. So for all of the solicitations that we're sending, on average, we're only getting 1.7 gifts. That means that's the middle. That means that that there's a lot of these people that are only giving one gift to the organization. So I would suggest as one takeaway is to start thinking about tracking the ratio of gifts to asks or to solicitations across channels. And I think over time you would see that that number has gone up, but we have not necessarily moved the needle on gift frequency. Here's kind of building on the point that Roger just made about over solicitation. If you think about across channel, a donor's receiving 40 to 50 requests per year, okay? And if the average donor is donating to 6 nonprofits a year, that person is receiving 250 solicitations across channels in their inbox, mailbox, phone calls, whatever you be. That's not including the people that count as charity, trying to be charity number 7. Okay, so there, and in the donor feedback that we've collected, we see this a lot. We see that people are actually opting out, not really because it's personal, not because they don't believe in the organization, simply as a matter of triage and trying to just reduce the amount of volume and the sheer volume of solicitations that they're receiving. And this is the hard truth, is that from year to year, this is looking at retention over a 10-year period, and we're not going to attempt to explain every year in the chart. There's always external factors that influence retention, and the reality is that we should be looking at 2005 and 2015. We have actually not moved the needle on retention at all. And if our increasing volume and volume by channel was working, it would show itself here. The reality is we're spending more and more simply to just try to get the same of what we are. And the reality is, when we think about this in terms of the investment that we're making, the ROI is going down. So let's talk a little bit about on the insights side from the donor feedback. And this is kind of, Roger and I were talking about this recently. He coined this well, talking about these hidden leaks and all these reasons as to why people stop giving, okay?
Right, Josh, I guess over the last year I've done 6 or 7 hidden leaks, these things that we don't know about that drive donors away, put the leak in the retention bucket. And one of the things I just wanted to flag before you go into this section is that discovering these is very important, and discovering these were some of the reasons that you've been able to come up with some new programs here.
Yep. Yeah, this is core to the donor voice kind of business, which is trying to capture feedback from the donor. So I'll kind of take you on a brief journey to look at kind of what we're doing here, because there's a lot that talks about kind of market research and that people say one thing and do another, and I want to kind of make sure we're all clear as to how this bit of insight that we're going to be kind of sharing with the market later this year is so critical. This is my life as a consumer. I'm asked for feedback constantly. I'm asked for feedback about pancake at IHOP, right? If you travel, and Nick Ellinger recently wrote a great blog that kind of talked about his week of tracking feedback. If you travel, you will receive feedback asked from your airline, from Uber, from the Wi-Fi service that's provided on the airline, the hotel, and so on and so forth. being asked for feedback is, frankly, it's expected as a consumer. And if you're not sure if this is reliable, just look at the sheer volume of it that you're receiving from some humongous corporations, and the way that they're using and reacting to this data today. With now, even more so, you'll see it so much with them following the social listening that's happening online with Facebook and Twitter, and people posting reactions to their experiences, and more importantly, watching these companies subsequently follow up and interact and try to save those experiences. This is all doable in the nonprofit sector. The reality is that we looked at this over the last 2+ years, trying to understand how we could start getting feedback at the point of interaction. So this is very important. We're not looking at stopping time and asking you about what you're interested in. We're simply trying to measure and understand at all these interactions, when you interact with our organization, how was that experience? And we're kind of showing you kind of the wheel of touch points that we're able to kind of create what we would call listening posts and start collecting this feedback, whether it's on the website after someone makes a donation, when someone receives a telemarketing phone call, what was their experience subsequent to that, outbound email, direct mail, sign up, post face-to-face recruitment. You know, this is a channel has had a lot of growth, but we've also seen that there's a very, very quick fall off of people opting out of those programs. So right after the experience, we are asking people for feedback about that experience. Okay, this is not broad-based kind of tell us what you're interested in. Maybe we'll only send you information about that piece of it. As we said in the beginning, we've got 31 clients, nonprofit clients on this globally, and we've actually compiled over 13,000 donor surveys. We're going to be publishing some detail on that later this year, but we'll kind of uncover a couple of the insights here. This is how it looks in the nonprofit sector, and as Roger said, frankly, it's the exception, not the rule, of organizations that are asking for feedback at this point in time. So we're trying to make this easier, and we're trying to find ways to do this where we can actually magnify the opportunity to give feedback. In essence, how do we take and turn the mute button off for our donors who we know are having experiences, positive, negative, and how do we get that information? And more importantly, how do we use it to improve the experience that we're having? Let me be clear. This is kind of stolen strictly from the kind of commercial experience or the customer experience or the CX space. When they talk about metrics that matter, right? These are donor experience metrics that get us beyond just response rate and average gift, the actual behavior, right? And so these are the things that are core to us that we're trying to understand in terms of success. Did the donor accomplish what they set out to do? Okay, let's use the online donation experience as an example. I may have actually completed my donation, okay, and what we see internally inside the organization through our analytics is that, yep, I donated, or I went to this page and I donated. What you don't know is that maybe I wanted to make my gift in honor or memory of somebody. Maybe I wanted to do that but not send a card to somebody. And there are components to this as to why I went there and gave, and may or may not have been successful in helping me do that. The second kind of donor experience metric that matters is effort. How hard was it for me to do this? There's been a ton of research done that talks about kind of just reducing barriers and making things easier to be done. Sticking with that same web donation, how many times did I have to enter or re-enter my credit card information? Or how many fields did you require me to fill out that I didn't, that I got an error message on to do this? Okay? And then the third piece is emotion. And this is how did this interaction make me feel? This matters because the donor's attitude matters. What we are directly influencing with all these touch points is their attitude, how they feel or think, positively or negatively, about that experience. So staying in that donation experience, I may have donated, I may have completed it, but it took me massive effort, and it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. And based on that experience, I have no intention of doing it again. Our reality is that we are actually not listening to that. This is a post-donation page, and this is just one that I pulled and looking at, but many organizations all look the same. That what we're asking for after I donate is email a friend, or like us on Facebook, or follow us on Twitter, or make it a monthly donation. Okay? We're not even sure at this point. You could do as an organization a lot to mitigate the bad experience that I had, and we should be asking about how was that experience before we start asking about having me share this on Facebook or Twitter. You very well likely, if I posted what I felt about that experience, you wouldn't want me to share this on Twitter, right? So just kind of using this as a small example of the things that matter. And as we think about touch points, like I've shown you examples here, you can do this on the website, but we should be doing this in our direct mail programs, right? We have a lot of space. I would kind of coin, your package, spread all out the components. That is our real estate, right? And are we effectively using all of that real estate in the most useful way possible? Is there a way to actually start incorporating an ask for feedback that looks something akin to something like this, where we're telling them that their opinion matters, and that once we get it, we can act on it?
Josh, I want to just emphasize to those folks who are with us today that this process, this platform you guys have built, but the process of getting feedback is so important. And Tom and I in the Agitator have been on this case for a couple of years, but it seems like very few organizations really seek their donors' feedback. And so, as you put it, they have the donors basically on mute. The mute button is always pushed. And for the life of me, I don't know how an organization discovers what it's doing wrong or what it's doing right without doing this. And one of the things that struck me was the comment mail that comes back from this feedback. You folks do. It's really helpful. I hope you'll go into some of that here, because it's really important that organizations understand what their donors feel, and I don't think they're getting that type of feedback.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely true, and I think that's frankly part of the reason why this kind of technology platform, if you will, was kind of brought to bear. The reality is that, Roger, so well, comment mail has been around for decades. And the reality with comment mail in many cases organizationally is that it takes up space in a bin in an empty cube or an empty office, right? And it's on that list of things to get to when we have extra time. And we all know how little extra time everyone has in their jobs. The importance here is getting it into a structured way that we can actually do something with it, right? That we can actually say that this person is, and the way that we do that is kind of presenting it to these people in a kind of a way that makes it easy for them to give it. Comment mail over the years has been people writing in the blank space on a reply device and mailing that back, or finding a scrap piece of paper and putting that into the package. And you really have to open up every single piece to find those hidden gems of opportunity, right? And so now what we've done is we've kind of turned up the volume by kind of the way that we're presenting it and magnifying the ask for feedback. And then we're getting it in a structured way that's allowing us to more quickly aggregate it so that we can understand process improvements, but also equally important, look at it at the individual level and talk about what's the improvement that we need to make for this one person. Our direct mail and our email, they can only do so much, and they can only answer so many questions. And oftentimes through the feedback that we see, we're oftentimes only one question away from closing a gift from that person, if you will, right? And so how do we get to that? How do we act on that? So part of what we're talking about today is how do we kind of solve for the volume machine. And there's 3 learnings out of the feedback that we've collected over the better part of 2 years that has kind of led us towards this idea of a new offer structure, okay? The first one is over solicit, which is that volume machine, which we kind of talked about, and I said earlier that people opting out is personal in some cases, right? Sometimes it's simply about the volume. So whether it's your organization that is over soliciting or not, your donors very likely have a over solicit problem. And a way for you to break through that clutter is to find a better way for these people to give, a way that most importantly matches what their desire to give is. The second piece to this is that we are interpreting kind of this intent to give as male preference. Okay, so and I'll talk about this a little bit more, but everyone knows nowadays that if somehow they break through and they're able to communicate that they're receiving too many solicitations, the answer is that we want to we'll reduce the frequency of solicitations. But I'll show you some feedback today that will actually uncover that in many cases donors are actually trying to express their intent that they want to give 2 more times this year. Okay, so what we need to do is start setting up the exchange that the donor wants versus playing this volume game with them. The third bit is kind of around monthly giving. You know, and there's monthly giving is the thing that it's the holy grail, right? This is what we all care about so much. The reality is it's just not widely adopted in many cases, with the exception of some of the organizations that have the child sponsorship model. Certainly in the UK and Europe, monthly giving is kind of the norm. It's kind of the traditional giving vehicle versus here in the States. But there's kind of several key elements that we've uncovered that are lacking in monthly giving offers that would go a long way to that we can solve for with this new offer structure, and also we potentially try to help move some people towards monthly giving. Here's an example of the structure, the way that we're able to collect and structure the feedback. So we're receiving this is the feedback from one direct mail solicitation. So those inserts in the examples that I showed you, where we were presenting kind of the URL that you can go to get feedback, or the voice recorded phone number that you can go to get feedback. This is the feedback from one organization's results from one mailing. Okay, and mind you, I would argue that this is an organization that we would consider has below average number of contacts per year. Okay, so they are not the true culprit in the soliciting donors 60, 40 times a year range. Okay, the reality is that 4 of the top 5 categories of feedback are all directly related to this volume model and this over solicitation pain point. Okay. Mind you, the second highest category is positive feedback here. So that we're receiving, this is not simply all complaints. People are telling you keep up the good work. Now, and this really speaks to the point that over solicitation, in many cases, it's an individual thing. And as I said in the beginning, this is what makes it so hard to solve for. There is no magic number. I will say that, and I will say that I believe that definitively. There is no magic number of solicitations that's perfect for every organization or every donor. Okay? The reality is that these people are giving feedback, and their feedback is constructive. These people that want to reduce the number of solicitations, which is the highest category of feedback, they are simply telling you that they care, and they care enough that they want to actually help you help them. So let's look at this. So here's some of the actual opening comment, right? And this is, frankly, we talk about this all the time, and people have seen this, right? Let's be clear here, and I want to kind of reiterate that when you look at this feedback, this is the feedback that we're capturing in the open end. So we didn't ask them if they think that they're being solicited too much, too little, or just right. Right? We simply asked them about their satisfaction with the content of the mail piece that they received. And then we offer them the opportunity, is there anything else you'd like to share with us today? Okay? This is the feedback that's important. Too often I hear that when we think about kind of donor feedback, that people say, well, you know, donors say one thing, but they do another one. And there is certainly some truth in that, but it's not because our donors are intentionally trying to mislead us. The questions that we're being asked are the questions that you can't reliably answer. When we start asking about what's important to a donor, it's impossible for that person to answer an importance in a vacuum. Okay?
Josh, I want to emphasize that these comments, as I understand what you just said, are coming from an open-ended process. This is not a survey. This is the donor saying whatever is on her or his mind. So it doesn't. There was no question asked about. There was no question asked, period, other than do you have something to tell us? There's no question asked about the number of mailing pieces or the number of emails, or it's not a survey. This is spontaneous on the part of the donor, right?
Right, absolutely correct, Roger. Yeah, all of these interactions, we are simply trying to ask for feedback about that interaction. So we're not trying to get at, yes, we are not asking a question about how they feel about solicitation, right, or the frequency of communications here. We are trying to, and what this is uncovering is essentially about the interaction that we've created. We've sent you something, and what we affect, and this is so important, is what we affect is the donor's attitude, right? How they feel or think about the interaction that we've created, and then how they feel or think, that's important because that how they feel or think is what directly is going to impact their behavior going forward. When we start looking, and this is where it's constructive, Roger, to your point, is you send out too many requests for donations throughout the year. They keep coming even after I've made a donation. Way too many mailings. If it continues, I'll stop donating, okay? You can absolutely believe this feedback, right? This is not about changing frequency, right? These people at some point are going to actually stop sending their donations. And this is akin to exactly what I think Penelope Burke is speaking to. This data that we have collected absolutely supports kind of what Penelope Burke's finding is around the fact that we have all this feedback. And these people are here. You can look at every single person here is not telling you to take them off their list. They're telling you that what they're receiving is too much and they want it changed. This is about, so how do we change it today, right? And so many organizations talk about mail preference codes, right? Well, they complained about the volume. So, we swung the pendulum the complete opposite direction and we flagged them one time a year. But you know what? If we do that, then they don't give. This cartoon is funny, but it's also true. Everyone has seen this type of feedback, at least some smattering of it that's made it through the walls of the organization. And oftentimes, instantly, the focus still remains on kind of planning the next campaign of the series. It's as if, a person is telling us that in this case, please send only 2 more requests in 2015 so we can give again and we'll try to increase our donation. The reality is that, well, what we'll probably do is we'll probably send them, our mail preference code allows us to send 6. So we'll send them six campaigns so they can give, as opposed to setting up the exchange for this person, right? In terms of understanding exactly what these people want and giving them the vehicle to give that gift. Here's the third piece of feedback that kind of speaks to the category that kind of speaks to the monthly giving program. So, and what we're looking at today is kind of a middle ground, right? This is in effect the solution that we came to is that, well, the volume machine in the single gift giving world is I'm going to receive a mailing, I give, and therefore, based on the fact that I gave, I'm going to get solicited X number of times the rest of the year, hoping that I'm going to give again. Well, we can always try to convert people to monthly, and everyone knows that we should covet monthly, right? It's an area that's talked about ad nauseum at conferences, and it's frankly it's the ideal for the organization. But look at the adoption rates. 16% online giving is only 16% of online giving comes from monthly. Offline, it's even less. It's low single digits when you start looking at your files, right? So there's clearly some issues with that experience. These pain points are the two that stand out the most frequently are no way to manage the relationship, right? This person saying, I want to give monthly, but I prefer to have access to my account online so we can update it ourselves. Update and adjust our giving when the need arises without having to contact someone every single time, right? My monthly giving, this is very recent feedback. My monthly giving contribution failed at the end of August, and I cannot access any record to update the credit card information that expired. We would love to have more of those donors. This person's giving monthly, their card expired, and in September they emailed us trying to figure out how they could update their card information. The second part of this is that monthly giving oftentimes lacks urgency, right? When it works so perfectly when we think about child sponsorship because of the ongoing need, but every organization is trying to acquire monthly donors even without child sponsorship or the perfect offer. And oftentimes we lack urgency, and it's hard to understand what our gifts are going to, right? And the reality is that there needs to be some level of almost try before you buy world that exists out there, right? Let's actually not ask people to just give us our credit card with no place to go and update that information, and do it in perpetuity as far as we're concerned, right?
Josh,
Sorry, Roger.
Josh, this is all valid, of course. In reality, how many of the CRMs out there, the tools that nonprofits have to use, provide those types of features where donors can update their own credit card information, or they can set various limits on the terms of their gifts and that sort of thing? I've always had the impression that there's not a lot of technology out there, which is somewhat ironic, because there's plenty of technology in the commercial world to do this sort of thing. So I just wondered what you ran into on that as you worked with these 30 groups.
Yeah, I would say it's better than those that are kind of using any sort of structured way to capture feedback. But sure, yeah, I mean, it's not tucked in. The online portal access isn't tucked into all of the CRM platforms out there. But there's a lot of organizations that have it, right? And the other important part is that think of this as crawl, walk, run. You know, I mean, we could set up a page on a website that would allow people to contact us that was just specific to monthly donors, where maybe they couldn't just simply log in. But we know a lot of organizations that do have this. We have one organization we do a lot of work with. Part of their feedback on all of this is when people give positive feedback, that's a great place to cross-sell, upsell. I had a great experience with organization X. Keep up the great work. The time to ask me to potentially become a monthly donor is not 90 days from now when the welcome series says we should, but let's actually send them to a place to do that now. And one organization actually has an autoresponder they send out that's having people go to their portal and create an account and set that up. But yes, that's fair, Roger. I mean, not everyone has immediate access to that technology. But I would say, as we kind of prioritize all the things that we focus on a daily, monthly, yearly basis, building our strategies, as it relates to our donors, this is a benefit that would matter greatly.
Right. Good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So where does that leave us, right? We have this massive number of people that are in the kind of the single gift world, and they're receiving all of these solicitations, and then we have this small market of adopters that have taken this 12-month, every month donation thing in perpetuity, right? So the question that we asked ourselves is, why not provide a middle ground that starts to meet these donors' needs and ask them to give 3 or 4 or 5 gifts? We don't have the perfect number here. What we do know is that gift frequency is 1.77, right? So imagine how your 3-year projections would change if you could get a bump in retention based on people being more satisfied and not opting out because of the volume model change, and we move the needle on gift frequency simply from 1.77 to 2. Think about what the compounding impact of that would be in terms of revenue. I've seen so many organizations that have built some fairly complex models that they can start looking at, new donor acquisition. And if we added 5,000 new donors, what would the payback be in 3 years? We'll start doing that same thing on moving the needle on retention and moving the needle on gift frequency. People don't do that because rarely are they ever able to move those needle on those metrics. So how do we do that? Let's talk about kind of this is, and as Roger said, this is the solution that we have in pilot for a couple of different organizations. And as Roger has kind of been privy to all of these things, this is, frankly, this is food for thought. This is a new model that's out there. I would kind of pose the question of why not find a way to ask people for 3 gifts or 4 gifts a year. This is what we've kind of come to. So kind of this multi-gift pledge program and kind of the intent of what we're trying to achieve. First thing is we're attempting to set these donor expectations and meet them. right? We talked about the kind of the effect on the brain that giving has, and also equally importantly, the effect on the brain that receiving solicitation has, okay? One of the things that we want to do is we want to start asking them for what we need up front. So in many of these programs, we will not be successful in raising money to support our missions if we aren't receiving more than one gift. If everyone just gave one gift and went away, it would not work. But that is in effect what we ask for, okay? By creating a multi-gift program, what we're asking for is for them to give us 3 gifts, or we're asking them to give us 4 gifts. So we're instantly aligning what we're asking for with what their intent is, okay? Secondly, by doing this, we can also then reduce the number of solicitations that they're getting for those people that are opting into this program. The second key component to this program, in our view, has been to solve for that pain point that's created in the monthly giving program, which is this kind of lack of need or urgency, or understanding of what the need and urgency is when we're talking about 3 gifts and 4 gifts, let's start connecting these gift dates with relevant milestones inside of the organization. This isn't just giving for giving's sake, right? This isn't just giving monthly and just hoping that the money's being put to good use. Religious organizations have an easy opportunity here because the calendar of dates rarely change on the things that matter to the organization. Other organizations have seasonal things that happen. There's anniversaries. There's kind of big events that are happening at certain times. Connecting the ask of those 3 or 4 gifts to a specific need or event will actually drive up the urgency or the understanding of the connection to the kind of the need or the urgency. And the third bit, which is kind of tucks in well with kind of this whole series that Roger's undertaken with the agitator here recently, is kind of talking about behavioral science and how are we using kind of our understanding of behavioral bias to attempt to nudge behavior. And there's a lot of ways that you can do this. And we'll show you, we wanted to share a couple today on how we're trying to kind of weave these things into this multi-gift program. I'll be perfectly clear, it isn't just as simple as asking people to give 3 times. We have to actually try to attempt to do these things. And to be successful, we've got to find the smart ways to nudge people. So we'll kind of touch on a couple of those here today. The first one is this idea of exclusivity, okay? And the reality is that, you know, if something doesn't fit neatly into an existing budget category, people are more flexible in terms of how they spend on it, right? And we know this. People aren't necessarily budgeting their charitable donations, right? So how do we actually play up on that bias, that behavior, and frame things in this exceptional experience? Here's a simple way to do that, right? This is a case study from Sussman and Sharman Alter in 2015 that was talking about some work in-market work that was done with Alzheimer's that talked about there's a walked-in Alzheimer's that's held annually. The click-through rate was 35%. The gift was $4.82. When they tried to make this an exceptional experience, simply just by nudging the words, right? Only once a year for Alzheimer's do we have this walk. Click-through rate increased from 35 to 46%, and average gift went from $4.82 to $7.13. Here's another example and this was a in-market, this was a growth vouchers program that the government was doing in the UK, and they had identified these 5 different kind of positionings to look at, right, in terms of the control was simply that thousands of people need advice, and you can get vouchers that cover half the cost of receiving this advice. And then we talked about time, there's a deadline. Vouchers are only available for this financial year. But they also looked at chosen, right? So that you have been chosen, so that you're a select few. You've been selected. That's just creating this sense of exclusivity as a reason. Social distance was the 4th, that other people were doing this, so that maybe you should be doing this. And then looking at money and actually kind of the actual exchange in the transaction. Here's the reality in terms of proportion of people who visited the website based on those different 5 positionings, chosen and being that you have been identified and selected, had the highest participation rate in terms of people clicking on and looking at that information. Another way, and this fits perfectly as we start thinking about target audiences, right? That we can, frankly, we can target this, but if we say, and if you wanted to look at this based on giving behavior, you want to look at target audiences, people that have been giving, but are still on the frequency of 1, and that you know that you would never actually be marketing to or targeting those people with a monthly giving offer. Let's say that they've been selected. Let's say they've been chosen. Let's acknowledge what they've done. Based on their being a valued supporter, we're offering this opportunity. Another piece that's fitting into what we're doing is this idea of hyperbolic discounting. How do Multigift offer to say, let's ask them about their interest in this program, and they can express their intent to do so today, but they do not actually have to make their first donation for 2 more months when that first milestone actually happens. Okay? This is a behavioral bias that there's a lot of work been done. Essentially, the understanding is that people are more willing to upgrade when we actually offer them the chance to do it later than they would if we asked them to do it now. Okay? And this is kind of looking at an organization where we have looked at the people that are this is upgrading, people that have actually upgraded now versus people that were willing to upgrade in 2 months. Okay? And this tucks in perfectly with what we're talking about. When we think about milestones, look, we're asking you to join this program. And oh, by the way, as a part of this, we will reduce our solicitations to you, but you'll be helping us support us on these times that matter so much to you.
We know, Josh, and in this morning's agitator, I have 4 links to a series of posts we did called Raise More, Ask Less. And we know on that hyperbolic discounting that organizations that do that and then go back to those folks and remind them that they intended to give them have 80–85% response rates on those people. So we know from testing done away from donor voice, but by other organizations that have reported it to the agitator, that technique is very effective. You have to remind them, of course, that we are, you indicated you intend to give this month, and we are asking you for your gift now. So it does work.
Yeah, and it's important to know. And next week, when Dr. Kutmeridu is going to join us, or join you, Roger, and who's our behavioral strategist, and she has her PhD in behavioral economics. All of this work is actually in the academic field, right, with her peers, and so these are real examples of how. But yeah, that's all great data. Here's one more that kind of behavioral nudge that has fit very well into kind of this multi-gift offer as we've kind of started to design it. It's this concept of set completion, and here's an example of what this is. This is actually a field study that was done where essentially what they were having large groups of I believe it was college students were completing kind of holiday cards to be sent to residents in nursing homes that didn't have family in the area, and they split them into 2 groups, and they did the positioning in 2 ways. The first was complete 1 card, and then once you've completed 1 card, you would hit a button and you would actually decide as to whether or not you're going to write another one. And what's important about this is that the only thing that they had to do that was different was simply just write the person's name at the top and sign their name at the bottom. The script, if you will, in the middle was identical. It was handed to them, so there was not as if there was some sort of heavy cognitive lift that they had to do. Okay, 4% of those people in that instance would actually choose to advance to do another card. The second group was presented this and said, we are asking people to complete sets of cards for us. A set includes four cards. And the way that it was positioned is, a person hit a button once they completed it, says you've completed 25% of your batch of cards. Would you like to complete another? 40% of the people participating hit yes and advanced to do the second card in the set.
Right. This is the same. This is the same. It was never called this when I was a boy, but I remember the sort of the perfect attendance at Sunday school. You would have a pin, and then they would add. They would have blanks underneath it, and then they would add the years as you had perfect attendance the next year. So that was a sort of set completion to keep adding the year after year to your perfect attendance pin. I know, Josh, it's somewhat strange to think of me with a perfect attendance at Sunday school, but that's how that was used.
You continue to amaze me every single day with that. Here's some examples, and I think you're right. No one refers to it necessarily as set completion, but you see this all the time. You actually see this. There's a lot of let's say the car wash. My car wash has the loyalty card, right? And they give you the set of, if you get 5 car washes, your next car wash is free, right? And oftentimes what they'll do is they'll actually stamp the first 1 or 2 for you as they're kind of seeding that list. So now I'm so much closer to completing this, right? There's a lot of things that we'll actually just do just simply because we're actually behaviorally we're nudged to want to complete the set. But here's examples of how we're illustrating this when we're presenting this to our donors within this multi-gift program. It's the pie chart on the left here is that your first gift on May 15th has actually already been recorded, and this is actually already colored in. Your second gift, August 15th, is now actually due. That's shaded, right? And then as we get towards year end, we can actually now shade 2 of those 3. So now all you have to do is complete this 1 additional gift to complete that set, right? So visual cues that can be used here to kind of support kind of set completion.
So Josh, tell us how this has worked in practice.
Yep, absolutely. So here's where we are. This is kind of one of the pilot programs for a large national nonprofit. We've determined that we have set this multi-gift offer at 4 gifts for qualified donors. We have set specific milestones and dates with each of these asks, each of these pledges tied to the mission, and the primary benefit that we've offered these people is that we will provide them regular updates on the impact, but we are not going to be soliciting them any further, right? And after the first date passes, we're actually then remarketing this as a 3-gift offer. So this is not a once and done type of thing. Think about it as almost like a step down offer. Through the first quarter of the year, we were kind of starting with this activation gift, and then we had these 3 additional milestones that were happening. Now, once we got upon that first milestone, we have a number of people that had already opted into the pledge program, and we have now gone back to segments of that file, and we said, can you pledge to join us and support us with 3 gifts this year? And then subsequently, once that milestone passed, we'll begin to remarket and start talking about pledging and asking those people for 2 gifts. Okay, so now this is very clear. We don't have disparate asks that are out there. And the people that have pledged, all we're simply doing is communicating to them when we're actually helping them or asking them to fulfill on what they actually said was their intent to do.
Good. So how did it work? Oh, here you are. Okay, good.
Yep. So the reality is that we've got on the first effort, in the first campaign, 7% response rate, $40 average gift on the initial uptake of people opting into this program. Okay, and then based on those people that opted in, nearly 60% of those people fulfilled on their second gift. At this point, we're talking about non-credit card pledgers. Okay, there was grumble. There was a number of issues on the credit card side. So the vast majority of these people are actually giving through mailed pledge forms. Okay, 60% of those people fulfilled simply by receiving the first pledge. There was no component to this yet that included any sort of telemarketing follow-up, and we're going to be looking at how do we actually start to use set completion at the end of the year to start kind of recapturing some of these missed pledges as we get into this. This organization's average gifts per year is actually below that industry average that the Blackbaud indices cites at 1.6 gifts per year. And the reality is this group actually exceeded that 1.6 gifts in 3 months with these 2 solicitations. Their control world, during that 3-month period, those people would have received 6 mail solicitations alone, not including what's happening in email. The reality is that you can think about this in terms of looking at fulfillment. We don't need 100% fulfillment. Thinking about just that last point with how we've gotten this group of people to give 2 gifts in 3 months, and they're on their way to give 3 gifts and 4 gifts, right? So we're actually moving the mass of these people that are single gift donors to giving that second time. We're getting second gift givers to give that third time. So the compounding effect potentially can be very big here, right? We aren't looking for 100% fulfillment on this program. We're looking to move the needle from 1.6 to 2, as an example, is what we kind of talked about previously. So next steps as we think about this, as we kind of roll out, expanding this offer to different target audiences, right? So looking at this post acquisition in the new donor conversion, making an offer to join this pledge program as a way to kind of get out of the up and coming kind of wheel of solicitations that they're going to be exposed to. And we've seen this loud and clear in the feedback. There are so many people that are giving us feedback where people have post donation on the website where they made their first gift. They're saying, please don't share my name with other organizations, or please don't solicit me 20 more times this year. They already know that this is coming, right? So looking at new donors, looking at prelapsing donors, and certainly a great place to be positioning this is to all those people that are actually raising the concerns about being over-solicited. Now we're actually able to go to these people and say, yeah, we actually have the perfect solution for you. Here's a way that you can give to us 3 times this year, connected to these 3 events that we know matter to everybody that's a pixel organization. Here's how you sign up, right? And so now we're actually aligning, we're actually setting up the exchange versus simply just changing the frequency of solicitations and hoping that we'll end up closing those gifts that those people said they intend to give.
That's terrific, Josh. You know, there's a lot of moving parts to this, and a lot of ways to pilot this. And Josh, would you be willing, if folks email you to explain anything that they may want explained? I mean, I certainly will. Like at the end of this, there'll be a slide with all the addresses you need to write. But if there are questions as you get into this, I'd be happy to answer what I can, and Josh, I assume you would also.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think we certainly could have covered a lot more in terms of, as you said, the moving parts around how it's working on the fulfillment side and such. So, yeah, I think the starting question is kind of why not ask for 3 gifts if you have a monthly giving program and you have a single gift program, and we'll be happy to kind of help wherever we can to kind of offer some guidance along the way.
Good. Well, then let's just summarize what we covered today. That this volume model that that the industry is, you know, many people feel they're on a hamster wheel. Most of all, the donors feel they're on a hamster wheel, and we know they feel it because we see it from the feedback. And really, it's important that we all get into the feedback business, because this is how we learn from our donors and able to serve our donors with the proper experiences. So start tracking how many donations you get per the ratio of donor donations to the number of asks, and consider putting in or testing, piloting a multi-gift program like this. The end result of this, from what I've seen looking at the donor voice data and the responses of of the folks who have been in this, is that there's enormous opportunity here to lower cost and to increase the net income and retention rate. I mean, the improved attitude on part of donors is significant for retention. So great opportunities, and I appreciate it. And here's how you can, on this next slide, is how you can reach Josh or me. And Nick Ellinger is standing by with any questions. I know we're going to run a minute or two over here, but you all have been very patient. Only 5 folks out of this huge number have left the room in the last hour, so that's terrific. Before we get to the questions, I'll remind you next week the behavioral science webinar on opt-in, the white paper that you can get from the webinar Nick gave last week on multi-gifts, gas string is available, and the white paper on this session will be available also. If you go to the Donor Voice blog and subscribe to that, you'll get that. And if you want to participate in the drawing for the free behavioral science audit, just subscribe to the agitator, and that is there. So Nick, I'll go to you, and questions that we have, and what we can't cover here, we will answer individually, or we will aggregate them and send everyone the questions and answers.
Absolutely, and thank you for that. A couple of questions that we're getting from multiple folks are, what does the interaction look like after a person signs up for the program? Specifically, how do you fold in increased gift amounts to the program, and how do you renew folks in a program when they're giving 4, 3, or 2 gifts a year, especially those who have stepped down in the amount that they're giving in order to give multiple gifts?
Terrific. Josh, you want to handle that?
Yeah, well, certainly, so if we talk about, Nick, and help me make sure I understand, talking about renewing people into this program annually is part of that question?
Yes, how do you renew people in the program, and how do you get them to up their gifts over time once they're in?
Yeah, great. No, great question. Yeah, two parts to that. On the upgrading side, in this one national organization, they've actually created, they've almost, in essence, kind of tucked in a port of their kind of mid-level program, which actually had some tiers. Now, the tiers are starting at kind of lower levels than kind of the traditional mid-level program. The tiers are starting at $100. And the nice part about the multi-gift pledge is that we can actually use kind of that cumulative giving concept to get people in. So the $15, $20 donor, we can say 4 gifts of 25, and you can actually join this level, right? But then as we've started to create benefits, and benefits in our view are much more around kind of recognition and access and less about kind of tangible goods, right, has been kind of the driver to get people to nudge up their gift amount, right, to get into the pledge program. And then on the renewal side, this is what's important, is that, yeah, this is kind of an annual pledge that you're making, and those dates kind of fall into this next 12-month period. But then we're also looking at ways in which we can kind of use fresh start effect. You know, it's a new year. How do we do that? And then also looking at people that have actually already, let's say, fulfilled all their pledges this year. We are offering, when they make their final gift, to complete that set, if you will, allowing those people the recognition to be acknowledged as already a kind of first-tier level member in 2017, right? As we go forward. So kind of using year-end as a kind of a catapult to get those people to kind of keep it going in the following year.
Yeah, it seemed to me you could build on that exclusivity for the next year. They would be the premier part of the whatever the select group is. Yeah,
right.
Good.
And it's kind of your Sunday school example, Roger, which we all know works, is kind of acknowledging and stating all the things that these people have done, right? That over time we'll be able to say that, you know, this is your second year as being at this level and supporting this organization. So that data as it comes would be important to kind of leverage and put back in front of people.
Great. What else do we have, Nick?
Couple of another related set of questions. The organization that you mentioned that was on the low end of what they were giving but still had complaints, how many pieces was that? And then do donors perceive donate buttons on e-newsletters or what you'd call soft asks as asks?
Yeah, good questions. I think the organization in question here, I think that their number of solicitations annually through the mail is 14, maybe it's 15. And you know, I would caution anybody. I said this before, and I'll say it again, that there is no magic number. So if you're less than 14, I don't think I would tell you that you're necessarily in the clear. So just kind of throwing that out there. The second question, which was about, say it again, Nick.
He was saying, do they donate? Does the donate page, when you have a donate button on an email, is it considered an ask by the donor?
Right. Yeah, I think, and this is this is at the individual level again. So I think this is why asking for feedback in those interactions would be useful for you to actually find out from your donors, because maybe the reaction is going to be different for each person. But I will say that I think that we drink a little bit too much of our own Kool-Aid, and this idea that we have a soft ask it's kind of like inside baseball. That I receive an email that has a donate button. Even if it doesn't have a donate button, somebody that I'm getting a lot of communications from, and a lot of the majority of the time they're asking me for money, even when you're not asking me for money, I'm probably going to be seeing that as a solicitation of some kind.
Right. The other thing where feedback should be put in, because we've discovered this at the agitator, looking at those hidden leaks, the donate pages themselves should be wired for feedback, because there's an immense amount of frustration by people who find some of those pages too complicated, too difficult, requiring too much information to fill out. All that just adds to the frustration and the poor donor attitude. I saw Josh and Kevin shared one comment with me. It says, "I'm old, I'm tired, I'm on drugs, the hell with it." I mean, people just get very frustrated by some of these donate pages. So take a look at those. Nick?
Question about whether the number of gifts that you're asking for is set by the nonprofit or the donor, and how that number is set. They also love this Sunday school pin and Cub Scout arrowheads as examples of set completion.
Right.
I know the Cub Scout arrowheads for sure. Yeah, they this is I think there's no magic number for solicitations, and there's I don't think there's a magic number for ask here. The way that we got to the answer on 4 was really 2 parts. One was looking at the gift frequency of the file, which in this example was 1.64, I believe, right? And and also looking at kind of the relevant milestones that we could put out there. This organization has 4 really good reasons and really good kind of periods that also, too, what kind of works out, and I think it's somewhat important, is that they need to be, somewhat spread out. And ideally you're kind of doing 1 a quarter. But the 4, asking for 4, is giving us an opportunity. As I shared with you in the data, the 60% fulfillment rate. We're really just we're not trying to get 100% of people to give 4. That would be nice, but I think that's probably an unrealistic goal, right? And we'll probably spending.
Yeah, I do think. Where I've done this in the past is tied it to. Religious organizations can tie it to religious holidays, but other organizations can tie it to events that they know are coming up, and if they make the case that we have these 4 events that we need to be able to plan and budget for, because we never have time during the event to raise the money that we actually need. So we need to get ahead of this, and here are the 4 times, and here are the 4 events. Can we count on you for 4 of these or 3 of these, and which ones? So you involve the donor in the discussion about her desire to support different activities and programs in the organization, and then with what frequency.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely a great little kind of creative exercise to think about organizationally. Is to sit down and look at your or think about your calendar, and what would those dates look like for you. Examples are, like you said, the religious organizations have it. I don't want to say easy, but you have military organizations that can kind of easily connect to 4th of July. Environmental organizations that can connect to Earth Day. Organizations that have environmental organizations that do some sort of massive projects, a tree planting or something that happens spring and fall, right? It can be connected to those individual things. organizations that do a lot with animals around, certain dates that kind of apply there. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to kind of take advantage of some of these days. Breast Cancer Awareness Month, as an example. Like, everyone's kind of starting to claim a month of the year, it feels like, at this point. But those are all obviously really great opportunities as well.
Are there any others, Nick? Let's take one or two more.
That is it.
Okay. Well, folks, you've been great to stick here with us. We've run a little bit over, for which we hope you'll have a sandwich to tide you over or something until you can get to lunch. And for those of you on the European side of things, we hope you can now get to the pub or to home or wherever you're going. And we appreciate your being with us and look forward to seeing you next Wednesday, when we're going to deal with the issue of opt-in and how behavioral science can help you with that. And on the part of Tom and me, thanks very much to Josh for preparing this, and to Nick Ellinger for his work on these projects and for his handling the questions. So you all have a good day and a good weekend, and we'll see you next week.